Art is too important not to share. Welcome to the Allie and Callie Artcast.
Hi, I'm Allie.
And I'm Callie. Welcome to the Artcast.
Yes, welcome.
Oh,
Callie,
yes.
how long ago did we meet?
Oh, I think it was around the 2000s, somewhere around like 2003-ish.
Do you remember how we met?
I believe it was a celebrity croquet contest.
Yeah.
And I was playing with my husband, Stu Cabe, and we were doing it for the Art on the Edge.
Yes, we were.
And we were at Greenbrier Inn, and Stu and I took second place.
Yes, you
but
did.
I believe
You won the best hat contest.
I won the best because it was called the Mad Hatter.
The Mad Hatter Tea Party and Celebrity Croquet
That's
Tournament.
right. Yes. And it was super fun.
It was super
fun. And I
fun.
just kept thinking, why am I here? I'm no celebrity.
I know. Oh, yes, you were.
I was a star of summer theater.
That's right.
For years and years.
It was local celebrity.
It was local, but it was fun.
It was.
We had a good time. Yeah. So
well, we had some really fun celebrities in that tournament.
I know.
Yep.
And I think we have one of our other celebrities here.
Right here. Yes, we are excited to be talking to Christina Crawford. She is best known for the book Mommie Dearest. She was Joan Crawford's daughter, and she has written a number of other books, and we are excited to talk to her a little bit about her life, but in particular, one of her books called Daughter of the Inquisition. So thank you for being here, Christina.
It is my pleasure.
Yeah.
Do you remember
And it's
that
nice
tournament?
to see. Yes, I was saying, I was remembering it because I hadn't played croquet since I was like 11 years old. So, I thought, well, this is really weird, but I'll do it for Chris McAvena.
That's right.
And my friend from Greenbrier. So
Right.
anyway, that was fun.
Yeah.
It was different for sure.
Hopefully we raised a lot of money.
No, we didn't.
Oh,
but
well.
that's okay.
It was
We
a
raised
fun day.
a little. I know. It was a super fun day.
So, well, it's so nice to meet you in person and then hear about all your writings, and we're excited about your book. But let's talk a little bit about your life, Christina. Tell us more about yourself.
Well, we don't have that much time, but because I'm 86 years old now, and I've had a miraculously long life. I was born in Hollywood and adopted and grew up in California. And I went to college at Carnegie Mellon in Pittsburgh and then went on to New York and was an actress for 14 years. And when that phase of my life finished, for a variety of reasons that are covered in the first book, I went on to college. I went to finish college and then got a master's degree from the Annenberg School at USC. And went to work immediately because I was sort of out of money at that point.
Right.
All that education even then was expensive.
Right.
And I went to work at the public relations department at the headquarters of Getty Oil Company, which was really interesting, but it's short-lived because there was no future for women in petroleum, and then as now. But because I was so highly recommended and came from a good school, and they'd never had anybody like me with that much education in the position that I was in, I was handed a project that none of the men wanted to do, which was a video of the owner, J. Paul Getty, who lived in London and ruled with an iron fist over the men. But nobody wanted to do that and put the raw material together in something that would be usable. And I understood why once I started to see the material. Anyway, it took me a little while because I had to pull it all apart and put it back together again. But he, the owner, Mr. Getty, saw it before he died. And it was the only film of him specifically, except for a Time Warner documentary that had been done. So it was fascinating. And I thought, well, when he sees it, I'm either going to get fired or promoted. But neither of those things happened.
Oh, well.
So I thought, well, eventually it's going to be time for me to go. And I went on. Interestingly enough, when I left, the universe has miraculous things in store for us. My adopted mother died that same summer, and I was disinherited with my adopted brother. And because I had just done the film on J. Paul Getty, who had disinherited his grandchildren, disinheritance was a big topic in the media.
Yeah.
And so that one line on an obscure piece of paper was picked up by the media, and I was furious. I mean, furious, because it sounded as though my brother and I had done something wrong other than survive. And so I sat down and wrote Mommie Dearest in 2 or 3 months.
Wow.
And I was no longer in show business, so I didn't have agents or connections or anything, but I did have a friend in New York who'd had a book published, and so I called them, and they introduced me to their agent, and the rest is history. And fortunately, although I had no expectations of this, neither did the publisher. The publisher thought that it was a sort of a celebrity tell-all. That's how they thought of it. They didn't realize that it opened the door to a subject that had never been discussed publicly, and that was the abuse of children.
Right.
Particularly the abuse of white children. Because the social services administrations kind of relegated family violence to the underclass, the underprivileged, and certainly not privileged white children. And it's interesting because the Menendez brothers have just been
I saw that.
scheduled for resentencing, and that means that they can be paroled. But at the time that they had their trial, there wasn't enough information about the long-term effects of prolonged and violent abuse. And so what happened was, over the next couple of years, it was fascinating because individual states and cities started writing laws, changing protocols, and retraining police. So a whole section of the culture of the United States of America changed. That was not anybody's intention, but that's what happened. So it was an astonishing ride that I totally did not expect.
So after all that, what was it that brought you to Idaho?
Well, I created a bed and breakfast, which is how I met a lot of people in Coeur d'Alene. I was asked that once, and I said, well, the same way as you got here, I drove.
That's the best answer I've heard.
I know, right?
I drove here. Yeah.
And that was true. But the other part that was true was that I said that, please don't tell anybody, but actually I'm part of the witness protection program. Which could have been true.
Yeah.
Right. Except that I wasn't convicted of anything. But the telephone system was located in Washington, across the state line, so nobody can get our telephone number. So I could have been on the witness protection program. And I often wondered if some of the people I met down in the country were already in it.
Right.
But I came to Idaho at 54 years old, not knowing a soul. I bought I had been married and divorced. I bought a homestead property on the Coeur d'Alene Reservation, but it was fee simple land, which I didn't understand at all until I lived there. It was the most difficult and amazingly beautiful experience that I ever had. And I was there for 20 years.
Wow. I was there once.
I know you were.
And we had a board retreat for the
Yes,
Art
I
on the
know.
Edge there, and it was a beautiful spot.
Yes, it was magical. And I learned a tremendous amount. But I think basically The reason I wanted to go there is because, I'll backtrack a second, I had a catastrophic illness when I was 42 years old. And I had a major stroke that left me paralyzed on the right side, unable to speak or walk or talk or breathe or anything. The doctors actually told people not to pray for me because they said if I lived, that I would be a vegetable.
Oh, man.
Because of the brain damage. Well, that didn't happen.
Thankfully.
Well, yes, but it took me 5 years to recover.
Wow.
By that time, the man that I was married to had managed to squander all the money, had left, and I was almost penniless. I had to rethink my entire being. Since I had a being, I wasn't paralyzed. I used all the techniques that I had been taught as an actress and a high school athlete, and I managed to bring back myself through rehabilitation. But the most important thing was that I realized that the universe wasn't finished with me. Why I didn't know. But I decided that this was a very solitary process, not recommended for most people. I realized the most important thing that I could possibly do was unite my entire life, whatever was left or was to be, to spirit. But I didn't know what that was. So that was a quest. And what I say is that I came to Idaho on a 20-year vision quest. And that's how it started. I've been here 30 years, almost 35. When I was 73, I realized that the life in the country by myself was just too difficult. When for 2 winters I could hardly find anybody to plow my driveway out. I thought it's time to go.
Time to move, right?
Yep. So I was fortunate to find the house that we're in now. And so I've been here for 11 years. Basically, that's a very long, strange story.
Right?
So the first book you wrote was Mommie Dearest.
That's correct.
And then you've written several. You wrote Survivor, Black Widow, No Safe Place, and Scammed. And then the one we want to talk about is Daughters of the Inquisition.
Right.
So what inspired you to write the other books?
Life. Not necessarily my life, but life. And they were all contemporary. Didn't have to do with history in the general sense. It was basically, the old thing about writers, write what you know. Even though some of the material was not about me, it was still my experience and my learning. But Daughters of the Inquisition was totally different because I had dedicated my life to spirit, and because I was trying to find what that wasn't religion as such. I became fascinated by the Inquisition, particularly when I realized how long it took. I mean, what extent of years that it covered. They say 700 years, but it's really almost 1,000.
Wow.
So when I started to write the book about the Inquisition, and then I realized that it didn't make a damn bit of sense.
Wow.
It didn't make any sense whatsoever.
Greetings, listeners of the Allie and Callie Artcast podcasts. This is Jason from Tubbs Coffee Roasters. Keeping art alive and culture relevant is the heart and soul of our community of creatives. And as a local coffee roaster who loves a good origin story of a painter or a farmer or a musician, we proudly support the Allie and Callie's Artcast podcast's expansion and exploration through positive conversation. So grab a cup of coffee, preferably one from Tubbs Coffee Roasters, and tune in, humans. Your ears will thank you.
For all your screen printing needs, trust the local you can count on. Pyramid Printing has been a Coeur d'Alene favorite for over 2 decades.
specializing in screen printing, embroidery, signs, banners, and stickers. For all jobs, big and small, just give Eric a call.
Email us at info@pyramidprintingcda.com or give us a call at 208-664-0254.
pyramidprintingcda.com. So as you started this process, you're talking about the Inquisition. Obviously, there was something else that you felt was missing. What was that process, and what caused you to start delving deeper into that?
Well, it didn't make any sense that all of a sudden, out of nowhere, the desecration of women happened all over the Western world. Mm-hmm. That didn't make any sense to me whatsoever. And I thought, obviously I'm missing something, so I tossed all the pages that I had written, and I went back to research. It was very difficult because I didn't know where I was supposed to look. And it's very hard to do research if you don't know where you're going.
Right.
So in the meantime, serendipity is a beautiful conception, and it actually happens many times if you're paying attention. Mm-hmm. I went with some friends. I went to the Ashland Shakespeare Festival in Ashland, Oregon, and had some time between plays and stuff, and found a wonderful little bookstore, a used bookstore, and I came across a book, a used paperback, small book, like it jumped off the shelf at me. And I picked it up and I started to read it, and it just blew my mind. It was a 1976 publication of Merlin Stone's book called When God Was a Woman. And I thought, that's the answer. And from that book, I started to pursue her story of what happened with women's history, her story, before the Inquisition in the Western world, which is a pretty big proposition. And it was a sort of a daunting task, but it was so fascinating that I was just propelled. That's the only way I can put it. What I realized is that for the last 2,000 years at least, there has been a concerted, conscious, determined effort to obliterate the language, the culture, the religion, the practices, the spirituality, and the professions of women. There were many days when I couldn't go outside. I felt so raw and so angry. Not at the world, but at what had happened. And I kept thinking to myself, why in the world don't we know about this? Why don't we talk about this? Why isn't this taught? Mm-hmm. It's not taught in school. It's not taught in colleges. It's not even. There's no designation in libraries. There's nothing. I mean, it was like it was erased. But how can it be erased? I mean, how can it be erased? It's up to us. I see my voice is raising. I'm sorry.
That's all right.
It's up to, at 86, that's pretty good that you can, that you have a voice, never mind can raise it. It's up to us to remember. And in the remembrance, we can change what our reality is in the present. But without being able to remember, without the information, without the education, without the knowledge, you're running blind.
You know, it was, I want to say like 20 years ago that I heard you speak at the Greenbrier on this book.
Well, it would be because it was published I wrote it in 2003, but it was actually published in 2004. It was available in 2004.
Right. Mm-hmm. So it would have probably been right around that time then.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I'm telling you, your talk has stuck with me ever since. I think about it. I never did get the book, and I regret that I didn't get the book that day. But now I'm reading it.
Well, now you have it.
But your first part really delves into the history of women prior.
Yes.
And it's fascinating. I love the stories about the women cultures and the symbolism.
The matriarchal societies.
Yeah, it's really fascinating. So you choose to focus on the goddess culture of the Neolithic. Can you tell us a little bit more about that discovery?
Well, there was a wonderful archaeologist whose name is Gimbutas, and she actually was a professor at UCLA when I was an undergraduate. She's written a number of books with the archaeology that was discovered at Çatalhöyük in Turkey. I actually was fortunate enough many years later to go to Turkey and actually see the excavation. It was very inspiring. But interestingly enough, some of that is now being, how would you say it, revised? So that some of the grant money, unfortunately, been used to downplay the role of the goddess culture, because I think the idea for a lot of people in the West today to say that women ruled the world in an egalitarian way, where everybody was taken care of, everybody was fed. People lived together in harmony for not just decades, but thousands of years together. That's unimaginable. We can't live together for 20 minutes in this country or in the rest of the world.
Right.
Because we don't respect each other and we don't respect women. And women are the life givers on all levels. And that was completely and totally understood. And we've lost that.
You refer to that as the women's spirit.
That's right. Women's spirit. Yes. And we've got to get that back if we're to survive as a race. I understand that periodically there are movements to restore a part of it. But as long as the prevailing religions teach the denigration of women day in and day out, it'll be an uphill battle. There's a part of me that's kind of sad that at this point in my life, I see Roe versus Wade being overturned, women's health being neglected all over the country. I can't speak to other countries because I don't really know enough to be evaluative. But we are losing ground. Right now, we are losing ground. And I think that has a lot to do with the drug epidemic, because when people have no hope, when they don't have any respect, either coming toward them or from within themselves, of course you're going to want something to decrease the pain.
Right.
And that's what drug addiction is, whether it's pills, fentanyl, alcohol, whatever it is, self-harm, the harm of others. We now have political situations that are all based on greed and bullying. And that's not a good situation for people to learn how to be any kind of human being, never mind women. Every time that women have had, major setbacks, it may have taken some time, but they have come through. Maybe it's because we have the life connection. So as long as life is paramount, women will eventually succeed. But without education, we pride ourselves on being sophisticated.
Right.
We're not. We're not any longer. It's very sad to me. I'm of an age that I can't go out and march. I can't do those kinds of things. But what I have been able to do for so many years, 50 years, is right. That writing is in perpetuity. It will last long after I am gone.
Sure.
Ever feel
feel like work and life are pulling you in opposite directions?
You are not alone. That's why we created Thrive, Learn, Connect, a podcast where personal growth meets professional success.
Each week, we share real conversations, insights, and actionable takeaways to help you navigate life and work with more ease, joy, and purpose.
Whether it's managing stress, building better relationships, or finding balance, we are here to help you thrive.
Listen to Thrive, Learn, Connect wherever you get your podcasts, because growth starts with connection.
So, Christina, how do you think this particular book has changed you personally?
Daughters of the Inquisition took me so many years to write and research. I think it changed my total perspective on the world because it is not about me. It has nothing to do with me personally.
Right.
I experienced it in terms of choosing the material, reading. The research was like a quest. It was like a travel journey. And it still is. The last project that I have, I'm writing a series of one-act plays that I don't expect to be produced in my lifetime, but they're called Time Travelers. And they're conversations between women who were contemporary, but not necessarily knowing one another. So I think if I hadn't written Daughters of the Inquisition, I wouldn't be able to do Time Travelers, because it opened my perspective to the widest possible angle. I mean, without being an astronaut or something like that.
Sure.
Which I'm never going to be.
That's not going to happen. Yeah.
Oh, that sounds fascinating.
Yeah. So famous women, or just literary women, or women in history together of different time periods?
Just of my choosing. For me, it's not about the publication. It's about the doing it.
The doing, yeah.
The creating it. Not just writing it, but taking thoughts and magic and inspiration and bring it into reality. So that you can touch and feel it. That, to me, is magic.
And I like the way that you said that it is in perpetuity. So maybe right now people won't see it, but at some point people will. And hopefully it will make that impression on them, the one that was made on you.
Well, you never know how people are going to respond. But as long as it's out there for people to access. The most disturbing part that's going on right now is the lack of access to legitimate information.
Exactly.
And the banning of books. We're taking several steps backward.
Right.
Yes, we are, because the Catholic Church used to have the index in line with banned books that they prohibited their parishioners from reading. That was as a part of the Inquisition. So even though at that time the Inquisition itself had been disbanded, the influence had lasted.
Remains.
Sure.
It remains.
Yeah. Well, going back to the Inquisition, that whole process, I mean, you said it probably lasted around 1,000 years. What was it about men that were so afraid of women?
Well, let me count the ways.
Where do we start?
Right.
The basis of it, I believe, was the fact that the entire Western world was polytheistic. That meant that people believed in many different aspects of God, goddess. And that was true of Greece, Rome, Turkey, Europe, all of the... I can't speak to Asia because I don't know Asia that well. But it was... So we're talking about the Western world. And then, and actually it happened in Egypt. One of the pharaohs came up with this idea of one male god. That was so severely contrary to the belief of all the people that the pharaoh actually had to resign and he had to leave Cairo. But at that time, the Hebrews picked up that one male god idea and brought it back to the land of Canaan, the Middle East. And that is historically documented throughout the Old Testament, that unlike the Romans who occupied Canaan at that time, the Romans didn't care what your religion was as long as you paid their taxes.
Oh, right.
and
that sounds familiar.
Obeyed the law. That's how they kept control. But the process of making people believe only in one male god that talked only to men was something that was so radical and so contrary to everything that everybody believed. Now, they're just women, just men, and too, that it took hundreds of years to change people's minds.
Right.
And when the Inquisition started in 800 AD with Charlemagne, who was the emperor of Germany, he created the Holy Roman Empire, which meant that everybody had to believe in one male god unless they wanted to die. So that's how it evolved. So that this idea of one male god talking only to men empowered men in the ways that they had never experienced before. And unfortunately, women were annihilated. Their professions were taken away, their land was taken away. I don't think it's that men are so afraid of women, although I think they are, because I think they know when they do something wrong, that they are violating the laws of the universe. That's what I think. But they have been unfairly empowered to believe that what they are doing is just okay. And encouraged. If you don't have any checks and balances and you're seen as the privileged few, they're going to behave in any way they see fit. Some honorably, some dishonorably. And without the protection of civil government, women have no place to turn. And that's what we're seeing again. And the reason that it's so dangerous is that people are so poorly educated that they don't realize what's happening right in front of their face. Yep. And that's really dangerous, and it's sad. They don't have the experience, they don't have the information, they don't have role models. See, that's one of the problems that happened. All the role models got taken away from women. It's not that there was just one way to be. There were many, many, many different ways to be, including being warriors to protect the people. But if you don't have that understanding of many different ways to be in this world, then you're stuck. You're stuck in whatever little niche you get put in.
Right.
And you don't know how to get out. And I think that's the source of a lot of people's depression, that they don't know how to get out. And there's no help for that unless you really take the leap, I would say, of faith, but I don't know that that's the right word for that now. Unless you have the courage to step outside the boundaries of what you've been taught, you're not going to find the answers.
Right.
Because you're not going to find the answers within the framework that you are depressed about. I think a lot of the drug addiction and the mental illness is as a result of the fact that people don't seem to have hope and options because they don't have the education and they don't have the information. I don't know, it was Einstein or somebody that said, doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results is the mark of insanity.
Yeah, right.
Or maybe it was Freud. I don't know who it was.
It was somebody.
Anyway, it was one of those guys.
Yeah.
But it's true. If you want to be healthy and whole, you have to step outside of the box.
Right. When we were talking a week or so ago, you mentioned that you are involved in a podcast.
I was.
You were. How was that? What podcast was that?
It was called Women and the World. I did 26 episodes during the pandemic.
Oh, wow.
I took goddesses and I explained, not all of them, of course, you couldn't do that, but I explained some of it. I explained a lot of people that have been overlooked, military people and inventors, and I took, every week I took a different topic, but I did a lot of goddesses. It was wonderful, and I enjoyed it, and it was something to do during the pandemic because I just couldn't sit and be depressed about nobody being able to be creative.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
Wow. I'm sad that you aren't doing that still, because what a great, I'm finding that podcasting is a great platform to talk about things that maybe nobody's talking about.
It is, and a lot of people I know listen to podcasts while they're doing physical work or driving, and so it's a wonderful medium to explore topics that might not be otherwise covered.
Well, I'm going to go back and check out those
Women in the World.
Women in the World
We'll
episodes.
look it up.
It was done through Like Media.
Daughters of the Inquisition was described, we found this online, as a remarkable account of her story. And I love the way that you write her story as compared to his story, history, herstory.
Language is important. What we call things is important. And if we don't have the language for something, we have a hard time conceptualizing it. Words are important. And it used to be that the human voice and language were the most important things that a person could exchange. And, the old saying, my word is my bond, that comes from ancient times where the human voice and the human story being told were the primary means of communication.
Right.
And so in some, I think, primitive way, we carry that concept with us, even though we may not recognize it.
So the book, Daughters of the Inquisition, is about her story.
Yes.
And how her story was unraveled by this concept that there was just one God, which then translated into the church, which then persecuted.
Well, it was that there was one male God.
One male God, right.
That spoke primarily to men. And that left out half of the population from then till now. The Inquisition, because it lasted so long, one of the things that's really important to me about the Inquisition is that the United States of America was founded at the end of the Inquisition. So all the founders were intimately knowledgeable about the damage that the Inquisition had done. And that's why we have a secular democracy. That's why the Constitution is written in such a way that guarantees people in the United States, citizens of the United States, the rights that they have. And if we don't pay attention, there are factions, and I don't mean to be conspiratorial, that are intent upon removing that. And that's out in the open. That's not a secret.
Right.
No.
That's not a secret.
No.
So I guess my desire would be pay attention. Don't go to sleep. Because if you do, you're going to wake up in a very bad place. It's not necessary to do that, but it takes people paying attention. Get off your cell phone. Think. Allow yourself to think. Allow yourself to see. most people walking around looking at the ground.
Well, Christina, you have definitely given us a lot to think about.
Yes.
And read the book.
Yes.
Read the book.
So Daughters of Inquisition. And you can get that on Amazon.
Right. It is definitely on Amazon.
It's
Amazon.
it's carried in ebook
Through
Open Road Media. They handle Mommie Dearest, Survivor, and Daughters of the Inquisition.
Well, thank you so much, and make sure you guys read the book. It sounds fascinating. It's the next on my list to read.
One thing, please don't try to speed read this book.
No.
Because, first of all, you won't get it. And secondly, it'll be overwhelming.
I'm finding that.
Take the time to read it. And if you need to take a breath, put it down, take a breath, and start over.
There you go.
Because speed reading it's too much. I mean, it's monumental. If I do say so myself, it is monumental.
Yes, it is. It is. It is very dense. I found because I've only gotten through that first part, that I often was going back and rereading just because I go, oh wait, what was that again?
Well, it's like an adventure. That's the best way to put it. You're signed on to an adventure, and a lot of this is going to be brand new, and it might be disturbing, it might be upsetting, it might make you sad. It usually makes me angry, right? But I can't afford to be angry very much anymore.
But it's definitely a challenge.
Yes.
A challenge read.
Yes. All good things have challenges to them.
Yes.
Only the easy stuff doesn't.
Right. That's right.
Well, we sure appreciate you opening your home to us and meeting with us, and we're excited to get into that book and share it with our book club.
Thank you so much, Christina.
Yes.
Thank you.
Make sure you like, follow, and subscribe to AllieCallieArtcast.com.
So I'm Allie.
And I'm Callie, and whatever you do today, make sure your day is creative.
The Allie and Callie Artcast is brought to you by Tubbs Coffee Roasters, ethically sourced, locally roasted coffee, and Pyramid Printing and Embroidery, serving customers near and far for over 2 decades.